Denton Mateychuk was a bona fide top four defenseman for the Blue Jackets this season. What does next year hold for him? We discuss on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get things started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. Now, today we are going to be talking all about Denton Mateychuk. Had his rookie season with the Blue Jackets this past year, and frankly, did way better than expected. So we're going to talk about how his season went, what there is still to work on, because obviously he is still a work in progress. You know, he's got 45 NHL games under his belt, and the hope is that he will play, 20 times that, right? But will it be a sophomore slump? Will he take another step forward in his development? Will it be a little bit of both? We're going to talk about all of that, as well as probably talking about his pairing with Provorov and what that means for the coming season, right? So Denton Mateychuk was, to my mind, one of the best six defensemen in training camp and preseason last season, right? However, he started the season in the AHL, blew the AHL away. He was, I believe, leading all rookies and all defensemen in scoring at some, very close to his call-up, right? He had a really, really hot start to the season for the AHL, which is, great. You love to see it. But was very much a sign of, is he one of those guys that's maybe not ready to step into the NHL and is too good for the AHL, or who knows, right? He had 25 points in 27 games with the Monsters this season. Got called up, I want to say November-ish, mid-November. His first NHL game was December 23rd. So he actually got called up 3 months into the season. And then I believe played in pretty much every single game for the rest of the season, which is great to see, right? And clearly a sign of the coach trusts him. The coach liked what they were seeing from him. His ice time went, up and down as rookie defenseman ice time often does, but he averaged 18 minutes a game, which is pretty darn impressive, right? And again, some games he played way more. He played 21 and a half minutes against Pittsburgh on January 7th. He played 13 minutes against Carolina on December 31st, right? There was ups and downs in there, but to get 18 minutes a night as a rookie defenseman is pretty good. Didn't put up the points that he put up in the AHL or in juniors, right? His final season in the WHL, he had 75 points in 52 games and then 30 points in 20 playoff games with the Warriors, right? And I think a lot of people were expecting that would continue. And it did in the AHL. It didn't as much in the NHL, right? He had 13 points in 45 games. So roughly, what's that, a point every third game, give or take? I feel extremely fine with that, right? On pace for a near enough a 25 to 30 point season as a rookie defenseman. I feel pretty happy about that. And I'm really interested to see, again, we'll talk about kind of what happens next in a second here, but I fully expect the offense to come, right? You see a lot, I feel with rookie defensemen, or young defensemen, let's say, they either don't score at all or they score a bunch, but the defensive game leaves a little bit to be desired, right? Elaine Hudson in Montreal, for example, incredible offensive season, right? Broke a ton of records, either NHL records or Canadians records, or et cetera, et cetera. I think everyone probably agrees that he has stuff to work on in his defensive game, right? He's shown that he can put the points up. Now he has to show that he can play in his own zone, right? Mateychuk kind of was a little bit of the opposite. I thought he was very solid defensively, and needed to work on the offense, which surprised me because, again, he was a force in juniors, was one of the Monsters' best players for the first part of the season. Like, I believe was named to the All-Star game, the AHL All-Star game. Couldn't go, obviously, because it was with the NHL at the time. But he was great. Like, I just was not like worried when he was on the ice, right? Now, admittedly, he had some brain farts. Let's say there was one particular one where I don't remember which goalie it was, but the goalie passed the puck to him and he just kind of threw it randomly out the zone and directly into the path of someone else who ended up scoring. And I believe that was either the game winning goal or the game tying goal or something like that, right? It happens, that he's 20 years old. He's going to make stupid mistakes. But what I noticed was when he made a mistake, he didn't really make that same mistake again, right? Like, you could see him learning. I think he improved leaps and bounds as the season went on. And again, he's doing a lot of the right things away from the puck. So I think once you've got that down, I think the offense is going to come, right? I think he's going to take a bigger role this season. He's not going to take a smaller role, certainly. He is the second best left defenseman on this team, like arguably the third if you want, but I think it's pretty clear that Provorov is now a right defenseman, or should be a right defenseman for the foreseeable future. But it is a lot of fun to watch Mateychuk. Like, if you go and watch some of the tape from like his first couple of games and then you watch his last couple of games, like it's a really, really interesting. He's just a lot more confident, which is just, it's getting reps in, right? His skating was always excellent. So I don't think that really improved, but I don't think it necessarily needed to. I think he got smarter with the puck. I think he gave the puck away less, which is, again, young defensemen, especially ones that have played juniors, I feel like they realize, or they don't realize necessarily, there's that jump to the AHL and then the jump to the NHL. Like, that was a really fast graduation from juniors to the NHL. You have way more time than you think, and also way less time than you think, right? Which is kind of a bit of an oxymoron, but basically, Mateychuk, I feel like, especially in early games, would just kind of throw the puck away because he thinks he's got less time than he does, which is kind of true. But he also has more time than he thinks he does as well. Because he doesn't need to throw the puck away. If he thinks, oh, I've only got a second to get rid of the puck, when he's used to having 3, like it's going to cause him to panic and throw the puck away, right? What he actually has is more like 2 seconds. He has less time in juniors than he has less time than he used to, but still more time than he thinks. And you could see, again, he figured out the timing, and again, we're going to talk about sophomore slump in a minute because it happens to basically every player, right? So I will not be surprised if Denton Mateychuk takes a little bit of a step back at the beginning of next season, but I think it's going to be really interesting to see what kind of player they get at training camp, based on what he's done this season and going into the summer knowing, okay, well, this is what I need to work on at the NHL level. This is what I need to work on at the NHL level. Like, that's going to be really interesting to see. So we're going to take a quick break, and then I want to talk about what to expect from Mateychuk next season, because I don't think we should expect, a Norris level season from him, but I think he will be both better and worse in different things. So we'll talk about that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I'm going to tell you about Monarch Money. Do you ever wish that managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings, planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. It's more than just a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investment, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. I love that it's all in one place, right? Like it used to be, I would open my banking app and then I would go to a budgeting app and then I would go to a spreadsheet and sometimes I would just write things down and then back to my banking app, right? I don't have to do that anymore. Monarch Money has everything I need in that one app. So I just open it up, do what I want, close the app, and I'm done. It's great. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for 50% off your first year. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. Let's talk a little bit more about Denton Mateychuk. We've talked about how good he was last season, but there's obviously room to grow, right? I'm not sitting here saying that Denton Mateychuk is perfect. There are still things that he needs to work on. Chiefly being, the offense, quite frankly. So I want to talk about what we should expect from Mateychuk, whether we're going to see a sophomore slump, whether we're going to see a jump forward in his development. And I think it's probably going to be that he gets a little bit worse at something and gets better at something else. Like, I'm expecting him to put up more points this season. I think he didn't really... One of the problems was he didn't shoot the puck enough. Which again is something you see with young defensemen, is especially young defensemen that scored a lot in juniors, is I feel like they don't have the room, they don't have the angle, they don't have the time, etc. So they just don't shoot the puck, right? I feel like a lot of the offensive zone time I saw from Mateychuk, and this is again kind of purely anecdotal, was passing the puck off to someone else or just kind of not dumping it in necessarily, but just kind of throwing it vaguely in the direction of the net and hoping for the best. He had 44 shots on goal this season, so about one a game. I expect that to improve, right? Like, and again, this is not a great comparison because obviously Zach Werenski is Zach Werenski. But by comparison, Zach Werenski had 298 shots on goal this season. Now he played double the amount of games, so if we, take that on pace, Mateychuk would be sitting around about 90 shots. So Werenski doubled him up on shots, basically, averaging about 3 shots a game or more. That's one thing that I think will change. And again, that's a confidence thing, right? That's one thing that has to improve, and I think once that does improve, you'll see the points go up. You'll see the offense go up. I don't think it was necessarily like, and if you go to hockeyviz.com, his underlying stats are that his defense was fine, but his offense was really nothing to write home about, which kind of that makes sense. And I think what you'll see is he's going to figure out that actually he can throw the puck at the net and have good things happen. And I think a lot of this as well will probably depend on his role in the pairing with Provorov, right? Like, to go back to, again, Werenski is not it's not a one-to-one comparison with Mateychuk, right? But Werenski and Fabro, Werenski was the offense on that line, right? Fabro was the support guy. Mateychuk and Provorov, I feel like there's not really a clear cut, this is the offense, this is the defense guy, right? Like, it should be one or the other. And it just isn't at the minute. So Mateychuk, for me, is an obvious choice to be the offensive guy. I think when Provorov is actually playing defense, he's much better. I think his, and this is not an episode about Provorov, so I'm not going to go on about it, but I think his, longing to do offense hurts his defensive game, right? He's not the fastest guy. He's not the fleetest foot. He's not the best skater. Denton Mateychuk is an extremely good, smooth skater. He can afford to use that to his benefit in terms of offense, right? Like, he will learn, hopefully, that he can step up into the offense and is still able to get back in time. My hope is that that's kind of how that pairing shakes out, is Provorov plays the support guy and lets Mateychuk do a lot of the heavy lifting. Again, if Provorov can be the Fabro to Mateychuk's Werenski, like, that to me feels very good. And I did like Mateychuk and Provorov as a pairing because it did feel like Provorov did tend to play the support role a lot more with Mateychuk than with the other guys that he's played with so far in his tenure here in Columbus. I don't know. Like, my guess is that that's what the pairings are going to shake out. Like, I have a sneaking feeling that they might try and make Werenski-Provorov work next season, but they shouldn't, because Werenski-Fabro was obviously so potent. And I think having Provorov playing fewer minutes is a good thing, because again, I think the less he plays, the better standard of hockey you get. But to go back to Mateychuk, that I expect to improve, right? As I expect the offense to jump. I expect the defense to slump a little bit. I suspect, again, it's you learn to do things one at a time, right? I don't think, especially young defensemen specifically, I'm gonna compare it to Cole Sillinger in a minute. I know Cole Sillinger's not a defenseman, but he's figured out how to play defense semi-effectively in the NHL, right? And now I think he's going to learn to push the boundaries. And I think when he learns to push the boundaries and improve that offense, he's probably going to give up a little bit in his own zone, right? And you have that kind of give and take of figuring out, okay, how far can I push this and still not give up as much as the other team wants me to, right? So my guess is the offense is going to improve. The defense is probably going to take a step backwards. Hopefully what will happen is they'll kind of either meet in the middle, or the offense will stay and the defense will slowly work its way back up. That's my hope anyway. Again, to compare him to Cole Sillinger was very good offensively in his first season and basically a non-factor offensively in his second season. I think that's because he was trying to do too much and he was trying to be better defensively, and he had to sacrifice his offensive game, and kind of what happened was he kind of fell in the middle and didn't really succeed at one or the other. So I don't think we'll see that with Mateychuk. We might. I don't necessarily think, again, progression and development is not linear, right? Mateychuk having a bad year this season is not a sign of, oh, well, he's a bust, right? And I feel like, again, this happens every single season, not with Blue Jackets fans specifically, just like in general, right? Of Dylan Larkin, I always think about, who was incredible in his rookie season. He terrorized the other team, and then was awful in his sophomore season, because that's how it works, right? Fantilli did not really, Fantilli started the season with a bit of a sophomore slump, worked his way out of it, but Sillinger, sophomore slump, Kent Johnson, sophomore slump, Dmitry Voronkov somehow avoided the sophomore slump, which makes me wonder again what we're going to get with Voronkov next season. But don't be surprised if it looks like Mateychuk is taking a step backwards next season, because I think my guess actually is that it will look like he's doing worse, but his underlying stats will improve, which is always frustrating, right? Because you're sitting here going no, I swear he is good. He just doesn't look good, right? Or, vice versa, of someone who looks great, but actually is not, right? So he's clearly still got a long way to go. But early returns for me are very, very promising, right? Again, I can't get over how good of a skater he is. And I think it's going to be a very expensive summer in a couple of years when Mateychuk comes off his ELC and Ken Johnson needs a new contract, Cole Sillinger needs a new contract, Dmitry Voronkov is going to need a new contract, all of this stuff to do in 2 years' time, right? But Mateychuk might end up being the most interesting one, because do you want to lock him up long term? If he continues to grow the way that I think he is, that could be a very interesting contract negotiation, right? Let's take another quick break, and then I have some final thoughts on Mateychuk as a player and kind of what I think his ceiling is with this team. So we'll talk about that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're talking all about Denton Mateychuk today. We've talked about last season. We've talked about next season. I want to go even further into the future now, right? What is Denton Mateychuk's ceiling? Because it was really interesting. When they drafted him, I was like, okay, this is fine. I was much higher on David Jiricek than I was on Mateychuk. Jiricek was drafted higher. I had done a lot more research on him. The scouts that I talked to had Jiricek ranked very highly. That's not to say they didn't like Mateychuk, but there was a lot more differing of opinion about Mateychuk. Clearly, he goes back to the WHL, works hard, has a really, really solid rookie season, if not putting up the offensive numbers that we think. But what is Mateychuk's ceiling in this league? Because he's in a weird space at the minute for, like, obviously Zach Werenski is the number one left defenseman on this team, right? And will probably be that as long as he decides to, as long as he's here for, right? He's here for at least 2 more years. I'm going to knock on wood to avoid like jinxing this, that he's up. His contract is up. I think, he'll stay. My guess is they're going to make Werenski the next captain. Although this team does have a habit of sending its captains places. Anyway, this obviously creates a little bit of a block for Mateychuk. I think he could be an extremely good second pairing left defenseman. Like that to me feels like a given. I also think he's about the right age to maybe swap places with Werenski, right? So Werenski is still like not that old. Because it feels like he's been here forever. But he's still only, 27, right? He's 7 years older than Mateychuk. So by the time Mateychuk is, 23, 24, 25, Werenski is going to be, 30, 31, 32, and probably ready to take a little bit less of a role. He's probably still going to be the number one defenseman, but I don't know that 32-year-old Zach Werenski is going to be playing, 26 minutes a night on average, or at least I hope not. Because that's a whole other problem that I have with load management for defensemen is if you should play your third pairing. And if you don't trust your third pairing, well, then that's a problem, right? Anyway, that's not what this episode is about. It feels like Mateychuk is the natural successor to Werenski, right? And the way I'm kind of looking at it, and like best case scenario, right, is that at the minute you've got Werenski and Mateychuk, 1 and 2. By the time Mateychuk is ready to step into potentially that number one role, Jackson Smith should be on the scene. And if Jackson Smith is what they think he's going to be, that 1, 2, 3 down the left of Mateychuk, Werenski, Smith could be very good. By the time Smith is ready to step up, because again, he's 18 years old, so is a decade younger than Werenski, give or take. By the time Werenski's 32, he's only going to be 22. And I wonder if there's a case of, once Werenski reaches 35, 36, your top 2 defensemen on the left side are Mateychuk and Smith. And then you've got Werenski on the third pairing as he, continues to age. I think Werenski, like knock on wood, should age pretty gracefully. The injury history is not like super reassuring, but hopefully we've got Werenski for another 10 years, right? But he's not going to be a number one defenseman for those, at the end of those 10 years. And I think Mateychuk definitely has that potential to be the number one defenseman. And if it turns out that it's a competition between Mateychuk and Smith as to who gets to be that number one defenseman, like it very much could be like a 1A, 1B situation in terms of left defense, which I am more than happy with, because I think, again, competition is good. But I do think that there is extreme potential for Mateychuk to be a top pairing guy. Again, it'll depend on who his partner is. And that's still kind of up in the air. I still think that they want to find a long-term partner for Mateychuk. It looks like that's going to be Provorov, but I don't know that it will be. Just kind of as players get ready, as players get better, as players develop, as players come in and out of the lineup, like it doesn't feel like Mateychuk and Provorov are going to be together for the next 10 to 15 years, right? Which is kind of the hope for you find a defense partner and you lock them together, But I think, there's definitely potential there for Mateychuk to be the guy in Columbus. If not in a couple of years, like honestly, in 5 years' time, I could see Mateychuk as being maybe the best defenseman on this team. And that's no shade to Werenski. But I think as Werenski ages, Mateychuk is going to get better. Werenski's still in his prime right now, but I think he's probably, again, 29, 30. Usually you start to see a little bit of a decline, right? And that should coincide with Mateychuk's upward trajectory. They should hopefully kind of pass in the middle. is the hope. So that's kind of how I feel about Mateychuk. I don't know that he'll hit that potential. Obviously, he's still technically considered a prospect, I think, depending on how you define prospects in the NHL. He's played less than 50 NHL games. I know some people go with 25 games. Some people go with 100 games. I'm still inclined to consider him a prospect technically, but he was a full-time NHLer this season. He's going to be a full-time NHLer next season. And he's going to continue to grow. Hopefully, he will grow into his hopefully he will fulfill all of his potential, right? But even if his ceiling is an extremely good second pair defenseman, I am more than okay with that, right? So that's what I've got for today. Tomorrow, I think we're going to check in on Adam Fantilli, actually. It sounds like they've started to work on a contract extension. So I'm going to pull some stuff together. I'm going to look at what the projection is for the contract extension, like what Adam Fantilli's ceiling could be, some NHL comparables, things like that. So we'll do all of that in tomorrow's episode. Thank you for listening to this episode, for making it your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Blue Sky at JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets on Twitter and LO-Blue Jackets on Blue Sky. Thank you once again for listening, and until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.